Christmas Eve had always been my favorite time of the year. There was something almost otherworldly about it. The twinkling lights, the warmth of the fire, the way the cold seemed to make everything feel more alive. It was a night of joy, a night of togetherness. But this Christmas Eve, it became a night of pure horror. It was the night that took away my sense of safety, the night that stole my peace, the night that proved the old stories we laughed about weren't just myths. They were real, deadly real, and worst of all, it knew me. The cabin in the woods that year, my family decided to celebrate Christmas at my grandfather's isolated cabin, deep in the dense forests of Arizona. It was old, a relic of a past long before me, built on land that my grandfather always said had seen things that no man should witness. At the time, I didn't take him seriously, but I should have. The drive up was long and uneasy. The snow-covered road stretched on forever, flanked by towering pines that pressed in too close, their gnarled branches twisted against the gray sky. Everything felt wrong. I don't know why, but as I watched the trees blur past, I felt it. Something was watching us. My grandfather, who was usually talkative, sat in the front seat of my father's truck, staring out the window with a blank expression. But I noticed something. His hands. They were twitching, his fingers curling and uncurling against his knee as if he was bracing for something. A storm wasn't coming. Not the kind made of snow. Anyway, when we finally arrived, I stepped out onto the crunching snow, breathing in the sharp, frozen air. But instead of the usual fresh pine scent, there was something off. The air felt thick, almost like it was pressing against me, like I had stepped into something's territory. That's when I heard my grandfather's voice. "They know we're here," he muttered. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it hit me like a scream. I turned to him. "Who's they?" His eyes were locked on the tree line, his jaw tight. "The ones who walk at night." A chill rushed through my entire body, but I forced out a nervous laugh. "You mean animals?" I joked, trying to shake the unease creeping up my spine. He didn't answer. Instead, he just walked toward the cabin, and something about the way he moved, stiff, cautious, almost fearful, sent an icy tendril of dread through my chest. Something wasn't right, and I think, deep down, I knew it. Warnings and whispers inside the cabin. Everything should have felt safe. The fire roared in the fireplace, casting a warm glow over the wooden walls. The Christmas tree, decorated in twinkling lights, stood proudly in the corner. The scent of cinnamon filled the air, but underneath all of that, there was a tension and unnatural silence outside, and a wind and a crunch of snow from passing animals. Nothing, like the world outside the cabin, had stopped. I saw my grandfather glancing toward the window. Then, without warning, he stood up abruptly. "Shut the curtains," he ordered, his voice sharp. My father, who had been laughing just moments ago, sighed. "Dad, it's just, shut them now." His voice was different. Not just serious, terrified. My father hesitated for only a second before obeying. The heavy curtains fell into place, sealing us in. Then, my grandfather turned to us. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "Listen to me. No one leaves this cabin tonight. No matter what you hear, no matter who calls your name, you do not open that door." The room fell into dead silence. "Grandpa," my voice came out weak, almost childlike. "What's going on?" He exhaled slowly, his eyes flicking toward the window one last time. "They come out at night. They watch. They wait. And if you let them in..." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They take you." The weight of his words pressed down on us like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The younger kids didn't seem to understand. They kept playing, giggling, oblivious. But the rest of us, we felt it. That slow, creeping terror curling around the edges of the room. We should have left then. But it was already too late. The first knock, it was past midnight when we heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks at the front door. Knock. My breath caught in my throat. The fire flickered, casting shifting shadows against the walls. No one moved. No one breathed. Then, another knock. But this time, from the back door. Knock. Slow, creeping dread slithered up my spine. Then a voice. Flat, cold, wrong. Let me in. It's cold. My stomach twisted into knots. The voice was familiar, too familiar that it was my cousin Josh's voice. But Josh was sitting right beside me. His face drained of color, his hands trembling. That's not me. He whispered that my blood turned to ice. Knock, knock, knock. Then, the voice changed. Now it was my mother's voice. Let me in.
I'm freezing.
My mother choked back a sob, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes. Oh God, she whispered. The doorknob rattled. Something was trying to get in. And that's when I saw it, through a tiny gap in the curtain. A tall, skeletal figure stood just beyond the window that it was smiling. And then, it spoke again, but this time, it was in my voice. Let me in.